energy efficiency lagging, and I mean, obviously, I would think tank. I like boring technical stuff. But I was thinking, will people be excited about energy?
Yeah.
Looking at the program, I now, I find it worrying that if I think about 27 print events discussing these things, this is the lacking conference. We are here to talk about the full time we gave this event, green finance and green focus. You're going to hear from our august panel in the different capacities. I'll introduce them shortly. The virus rules are essentially, my colleague will point out, Gyroscope rule. It's the fire news state. The other thing is that camera there is currently broadcasting or narrowcasting or whatever it does this session to our YouTube channel. So when we get the Q&A section, just bear in mind you're not filming your in the room, you're also filtering to potentially millions of people out there. And that's and the so we'll be captured for posterity as well. Bear that one in mind. I think that's about all for me. Word question. Our first you may, with the events before, you may at some point hear a strange squeaking noise because there's a door through there that has a badly oiled key. It's not a small animal trapped in distress, I promise you. I hope that actually happens though, or you do that. So our first speaker is James Close, who's climate change from NatWest Group. Talk to us about the role that green finance can play in taking the carbon out of 90 million number now, 90 million homes that Labour is intending to insulate and decarbonise.
Great, thank you, James, and great to be with you all here in Liverpool. And as you say, James, a huge amount of energy in the conference around net zero and green. I think framed in that context, this is an opportunity as well as a huge challenge. I think when you started looking at the net zero challenge, it's impossible not to think about how do you use less of it first, and that's obviously megawatts, as they've been called sometimes, is the most effective way of reducing energy consumption. And energy efficiency really is the gift that keeps on giving, and particularly in an environment where Russian gas prices are going up through the roof and people are struggling to put food on the table and pay the bills. So we're really looking forward to the discussion here, and also talking about what we're doing and how we can help mobilise resources to protect those 90 million homes and, of course, the rest of the UK's commercial real estate. Also, thanks to Dan, Polly, and Mike as well for joining the panel, and thanks for you for being here. I'm head of climate change for NatWest. I guess most banks now have a head of climate change, but I think we were one of the first in the UK. And we did it because we put climate change at the heart of our purpose-led strategy, which is about helping our customers thrive. And we think it's very important we have an obligation to do our bit to support the climate emergency, but most importantly, help our customers as they deal with those related issues. And of course, the built environment's a significant part of the UK emissions. And with the housing stock we've got, it's very challenging to reduce the emissions at the rate that we need to do. And that's why we think that we've got this unique opportunity really to help reduce costs by bringing together many of the actors through the supply chain. We need the demand side, consumers, customers, and people who residents to want to do this, to be able to feel as though it's relatively easy and they know they're going to get good results from it. And we need the supply chain to know that the demand is there so they can gear up with the investment and the skills that are required to deliver this in a very effective way. And of course, because it's an investment, you need the money to sit alongside it. And that's where a bank like us comes in with responsible and productive lending to support the transition. I think when we think about the UK's plan and reducing emissions from 90 baseline to by 68% by 2035, that is consistent with the science and the pace at which we need to reduce emissions. We've adopted a similar target, which is to halve the climate impact of our financing by 2030. And our mortgage book is about 10% of the emissions on our balance sheet. So it's really important that we are able to deliver that target in a way that our benefits for our customers, which obviously reduces their long-run costs, but also to upgrade the whole of the UK housing. So we set ourselves by 2030, 50% of our mortgages being EPC A to C. But of course, if we just target the existing EPC A to C, we won't improve the UK's housing stock. So, this is a stock and a flow issue. You've got to get that A to C, F to D's up to A to C. And at the same time, of course, it's almost inconceivable to be financing any new developments that aren't EPC A to C. So we've made that commitment as well. And I think this is really the ultimate collaboration as well, because no one person has got all the skills, capabilities, or policy insight to get this to work effectively. And we've been around this particular loop a couple of times with the Green New Deal, various versions of Green Home Grants and the eco that the utilities have done. And some of them, we've learned a lot from all of them, but we need to consolidate all that learning and think about how we're going to take it forward in a way that's going to be particularly helpful. And we think, so we've looked at trying to start to track attitudes. If you think about the demand side, attitudes to retrofitting and green homes. So we've done this in the Green Homes Attitude Tracker. And the results, I think, are starting to become quite encouraging. So 53% of UK home owners want to make green improvements over the next 10 years. And that's up from 54% a year ago. So a good trend there, although it's still relatively easy to wonder what the other 37% are thinking. We've got the money available. We've got a £100 billion target for climate sustainable funding by 2025. A big chunk of that is expected to go to green mortgages, and of course we expect a lot of it to go to commercial real estate and to improve the quality of the commercial real estate as well. We can't do this we do need to educate, sound a bit patronizing, but we do need to help people understand what the benefits of doing this are and give them confidence that the return from that investment is going to come. And I think that's another thing that we're embedding in the touch points that we have with our customers. So we have the financial health check, which we run with customers every year, where we point out some of these things. And at the same time, we can let our customers see their EPC mortgage, EPC rating more well. And again, we believe this is a team sport. So we have a coalition which has got British Gas, which is Bosch, acting in an advisory capacity. That's been a really helpful group of people to start to put together ideas and thoughts about what we can do. And we want to bring this to life practically as well. So we're doing through the green homes retrofitting projects where we're retrofitting 10 different types of residential properties. And we can get that and use that as a means of discovering what works, and then scaling up the action that we've got there. Lots of other challenges that sit around this, building the skills in the work, helping small businesses get access to the capital that they need, and supporting what will be consolidation in the industry as the market starts to grow and accelerate. But we think it's really important. We can't hit our targets without doing this. It's right for our customers that we're helping them get onto a much better financial position as a result of doing it. And ultimately, it's a productive use of our balance sheet, which is something that we're really keen to demonstrate and to do. So that's why we're here, and that's why we're talking about energy efficiency for green homes.
Thank you very much. I will come back with you and the rest of the panel to that. We'll point about education later on in the discussion we had there, and also about the 37% you identified, the people who aren't interested in stuff. But hopefully we'll come back to that. The rest of the panel, we're very fortunate to have voices from every tier of government across England anyway. So and the first one we're going to do is Mayor Dan Norris from the mayoral quarter in the South. So Dan, how are you going to green housing in the Southwest?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, James, from the Central Office Foundation, and James from the inviting me here today. Thank you very much to the comrade who's in the makeup off my shoulder. This meeting is going to cost me a very expensive suit, but it has a saving today. Now, I'm going to start off by telling you when I was last an MP, got become a mayor recently. I was in the Labour government. I was an environment minister with responsibility for climate change adaptation, particularly in some adaptation, but also rural affairs. I'm just going to tell a little story because I think it's probably interesting given what recently happened and what we're talking about today. And one of my early jobs on becoming deputy minister was to go and see the then Prince Charles to talk to him about affordable housing and how we make homes more energy efficient. Back then, so he was that at that early stage as well. And there was huge tensions around my private office staff. I've only just met them. I'm a Quaker, so I don't use titles. And they were very anxious that when I met the Prince, that I would somehow break etiquette or upset them, saying, don't touch the royal personage. I'm not quite sure what they meant by that. I was told not to do that. And I showed them that they need not worry. Went to Clarence House, I think it was, which is kind of funny talking about affordable homes going to Clarence House. But anyway, I went along and the Prince was there, and he was surrounded by his large entourage of people, all standing at the edge of the room and him in the middle. And then I came in and I kind of went into the middle, obviously, to greet him. And I was surrounded by more civil servants than I'd ever seen. And then I had to make sure that they wanted to come and see the Prince rather than be with me. So anyway, we got chatting and we walked into a large sort of room, much larger than this, let's say 4 or 5 times bigger than this. And he and I stood in the middle, with all these people around here. It was the most surreal thing. So anyway, we started talking, and then we cut to the chase. He said to me, "So, what are you going to do about affordable homes in rural areas and energy efficiency in homes and things?" And I said, "Well, you've got all the contacts in rural areas rather than me." And he said, and I quote, "No, that's bollocks." He said. And I said, "Is that OOCKS or LLOX?" And he found that very amusing. I said, "You could bending over, slapping his head, leaning forward, laughing very loudly, repeating the word bollocks, bollocks," to the absolute dismay of my And as he leant towards me, I actually put my hand on his shoulder. So I did touch the royal person. So not only know what all my civil servants and his people thought, because he's shouting bollocks repeatedly and laughing, and I'm tapping him on the shoulder. But anyway, the important thing was, when I go across the when I came in, the thing that was quite concerning was the minister. What my civil servants gave me a load of information, but you actually sinkhole. So you've got to work out what is the important stuff. And the bit that I remembered above all the stuff else was when they gave me information about the history of CO2 emissions produced by countries around the world since the planet ever existed. I'm going to do some involve some audience participation just to make sure you're awake and you sit there asleep. So I'm going to ask you, in the history of the world, which country do you think has produced the most CO2 ever in the history of the world? So I'm going to pick on people who don't put their hand up. So you're smiling, and I'm pick on you.
UK.
UK, okay. Anybody else?
America.
Okay, anybody else? So, China, okay. Anybody else?
India.
India. Okay, right. So look, we could go through a long list. The answer is first in America. Second is making up just 0.5% of the world's area is the UK. In the history of the planet, we have produced the second biggest amount of CO2 ever. Of course, because we had the Industrial Revolution first, and what have you, Germany, and I can't quite remember the others. It isn't what you think. It isn't the Chinas or the Indians. Will probably be the case fairly soon, but it wasn't at that time. So what I genuinely believe is there's a climate emergency. And because we are a huge contributor to that system, we have to have a moral authority. Of the world, but actually we have to show it. Unless we lead on that, unless we show that we have a climate emergency, we have to do something about it. And now with the price of energy making it so tough for people, it's not just a question of being environmental, it's actually making sure homes are not just affordable to buy, but affordable to live in. I mean, it's no good having a house that you can buy or purchase or rent or whatever it is if you don't turn heating on because you cannot afford to run it. That is crazy. So we really have to do that. And only 1%, if I'm right, I'll be prepared to be correct. I think 1% of homes now are new build, the rest are older homes. And if you represent the West of England, I'm very proud to do, my home area, the famous cities of Bristol and Bath in particular, and very rural areas outside too. What you realise is there's a huge range of housing stock needs addressing. It's very complicated, and we all need to find local solutions to our own communities' needs. So you can imagine the very grand Georgian splendour of Bath. Nothing was ever designed with the climate emergency in mind there when they were built, of course. Similar with the housing stock right across Bristol, much more conventional, but some real challenges there. And then equally so, the white light stone cottages outside in very beautiful rural areas. No gap between the walls there, solid walls all the way through, and often no foundations either. That is the nature of the challenge. So we have to find out how. Now, James is prepared to invest lots of money from that west. They're looking to do that. That is very exciting from my point of view, because 10 years ago or 12 years ago when I was Prime Minister, there wasn't the appetite for money and resources, and that has changed. That's a very good thing. And I actually think that retrofitting is a very cost-effective thing to do. It's the gift that keeps giving. That's what I referred to earlier, and that is absolutely true. So it's something we shouldn't need to be motivated about. What we need to do is get on with it, and that's exactly what I did as soon as I became Metro Mayor last May. So we immediately created a £50 million green recovery fund. A large part of that is retrofitting, and that is because I have 250,000 leaky homes, whether they're in Bath or Bristol or outside, that need addressing, and they need addressing quickly. The people there are way ahead of the politicians in terms of environmental concerns. We have an ambitious 2030 net zero target for our region, and see the way by incorporated 2030 as a target for some of the things that they're mentioning this week about environment. I absolutely like to do that because the emergency is an emergency. That is the reality. But it is ambitious. It means that we in the West Country have to make year on year 10% emissions year on year to reach that target. It's going to be tough, and there are all sorts of issues beyond the remit of this. But I am having struggles with trade unions in some cases and others businesses as well, because I don't believe we should be expanding Bristol Airport CO2 emissions. I think that's by the way now the good thing about my region is that we built Concorde and we make engines and we design incredible aircraft, and we are hoping that it probably won't be as close to or as soon as we want, close to making very energy efficient aircraft too. But it's a challenge. It's a way off, and certainly way beyond 2030. So look, I think I'll stop there because I don't want to be left on there's some other great speakers to come soon. But thank you very much for inviting me. I think it's a really exciting time. But one of the terrible things about the pandemic was it was obviously sort of tragic in many ways. But what I think has been positive about it, and we must, and not many people say that, talking about it, but I do think it's changed the way people think. I think it's questioned the conventional wisdom. People, if we'd been having this discussion about a pandemic 3 years ago, no one had bothered to think about it. It's not, wouldn't have happened, it wouldn't have thought. But that experience has taught us that major challenges do exist that can come unexpectedly. And I think that's helpful to getting people to recognize on an emergency and therefore to get on with the things we need to do. That we're discussing today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And sorry for the raw anecdote. They're not obligatory, but and we'll come on to and think you mentioned the different types of stuff, the different types of housing you got in your area. I think we'll come back and talk about different types of housing stock that you were both probably and winter housing. But our next speaker is Boyd Billington from UK 100, not currently an elected Labour representative, but
I'm out to work.
I haven't finished my sentence.
Sorry.
Elected Labour representative, I point to them, you want to see her around. So, but yes, but we'll get complete about the local authority perspective on economic and under group finance there.
Thank you very much, James. Yeah, UK 100 is a network of local leaders from across England, Scotland and Wales. There's now more than 100 of them who've made a commitment to get to net zero before the 2050 target legislation. Why they made it earlier, by 2045 or earlier as possible? Because they know the most ambitious need to go faster because they will always be laggards, and if you want to hit 2050 to get there. And they couldn't. So by making that commitment, they give themselves a platform to lobby for national legislation and regulations to change in order for that to become a reality. And the reason why local leadership is so important is because almost everything the Whitehall does in terms of leaders when it comes to this, and I know there's not just from Dan's anecdotes, but also my own experience as a special advisor before 2010, is the levers in Whitehall don't work when it comes to what needs to happen in places. Places are led by people, and those people tend to be the people who are best placed in order to be able to bring a community together, are people who are locally accountable, and that's our elected leaders. So the focus I think that we need to have is on place and on people, on partnership, and particularly between the public sector and the private sector. Now, in previous years, the reality is you can only spend so much public money on this. The amount of money that is required should not be coming from the taxpayer. It should be leveraging in private money in order to get there. Anything else is fiscally irresponsible, and Rachel wouldn't let us do that, would she? So the reality is, of course, local decision makers, people who are elected and make decisions already, 40% of our members are local council, already have to make fiscally responsible decisions every day. So they know the importance of making sure that if they're going to spend public money, they spend it wisely. There are some things that need to be done in order to be able to come from the market so that eventually people who can afford to pay can find the products that, for example, James at NatWest is developing. But we need to make sure that we've got a workforce, that we've got a supply chain, and that the people who need it most get it first. And the reason I say the people who need it most get it first is because that actually helps us to create that supply chain and create that workforce. For example, one of the things that's particularly difficult about retrofit, and I know I'm probably speaking to some converters here, because if you got up at 9 o'clock in the morning after the Monday evening, you probably are really enthusiastic about this stuff. But what they call it, then economists call it a state incentive, i.e. the money, unless you own the property, benefits sites. So therefore, for social housing, that needs to be seen fundamentally as a public good. But if the benefit goes to the people who live in those homes, that's great. So what we make an assumption, broadly speaking, that they're going to be on low income, but they need to be beneficial for the wider community. And this is one of the things I would give a slight challenge to the party on this 19 million home target. There's a little bit of Ukrainian tractor targets, as we used to call it under Gordon, right? Lots of numbers pumping out, right? And nobody, and what it means is, on the receiving end of that message, says, well, is my home going to be one of those 19 million? Because if it's not, it's going to somebody else. Why should my money being spent on somebody else? That's why it's important to be able to have the supply chain and the workforce argument as part of the story. I would actually argue we shouldn't just be talking about a particular number of homes. Because ultimately, as Dan has said, and as James has referred to, we need to be able to decarbonise all of them. So I would suggest, and this goes to the challenge as well I've got about the policy, this is really nerdy, but I'll just bear with me. EPC standards don't really drive carbon emissions reduction. They're not really actually particularly even very good for energy efficiency either, but they particularly don't reward carbon emissions reduction. So we probably need to redesign that. That's the kind of knotty thing that you can only do in government. So that's why it's not something I necessarily raise in public right now. However, what we can do is establish something I would suggest called a component guarantee and a component service. Why would it come to rather than warm? Because we need to think about heat stress. I don't know what it was like for you during July, but I know that for me as a Hackney councillor with lots of elderly residents in poorly insulated, hot council flats, I did not want to have one of those calls which said that one of your residents had to be moved out because of the consequences of that. So we need to think about it in a whole sense. And I think a service, a guarantee, meaning that everybody can say, well, my home should be able to meet that guarantee. And that guarantee should be able to therefore be supplied and supported by a service who will somebody come around and actually say, this is what you need. And what this also helps us do is build some of those relations with the trade unions that is important about reskilling their members. So that rather than them just stuck in their teeth and say, oh, what you need is what I've always given you, is for them to say, hey, what you need, you want something that I now know about and can deliver for you in a way that will transform our places. We've already seen the way that finance needs to change, not only in terms of, like I say, leveraging in private finance, but finding ways of developing demand aggregation. We've done it with solar, where people have done those reverse auctions. Now, Greater Manchester Command Authority is doing demand aggregation finance on retrofit. These things are possible. We also have local authorities issuing local climate bonds, and that means that you can get the enthused, which will be definitely people stream, and many others, to invest locally in a climate bond, which means the local authority can then use that money to start doing things that could otherwise be difficult to finance. Local authorities therefore create markets, they create work, they create supply chains, and they can help skill up the workforce that we need, because it's less about needing more jobs, it's definitely about needing more skills. But we've got a gap from the government. Even before the latest craziness, I was having to be excessively optimistic and Pollyanna-ish in order to be able to keep getting up in the morning. But now we've got a gap in the new growth plan with nothing about retrofit, a freeze on the energy freeze is a short-term solution, not a medium or long-term one. And although we do have the UK Infrastructure Bank, and Rishi Sunak, when he was Chancellor, did give them an instruction that retrofit should be one of the things that they should be funding. Let me be honest with you, the UK Infrastructure Bank is learning is having to learn quite quickly about local government finance. I would put that politely. So let's remember that this needs to be in places. It's not only about the able to pay, but neither is it only about social housing. We need to think about it in a holistic way and remember that retrofit only really is part of the solution. It needs to be seen overall in a way of generating energy locally, storing it and using it smart energy system. That's where we'll get to net zero. And as Keir said the other way, he's not a tree hugger green, he's a jobs green. I don't care what kind of green you are, we need to get this done.
Thank you very much, Polly. I think that the EPC redesign, local climate bonds, aggregate reverse auction, you're always dumbing down politics, aren't you?
Such a nerd. I didn't cut any of this on the newspaper, did I?
Our final speaker is Mike Ingram from the parliamentary level. Mike is the people we avail and has held a number of shadow front roles. Welcome to the shadow housing minister. Yeah. So we can hear from Mike from the parliamentary level about what can be done from Westminster to drive this level.
Well, thank you, James, Dan and Polly. And you know what? I'm excited to be here. I know everybody else is here despite the fact it's, like I say, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. But I know if I was to do a straw poll, I'm not going to do this because we've already done one so far with Dan. The vast majority of people, if I ask the question, would you like to buy or purchase a green home if you're able to? Some may have already done so. People would say yes. In fact, a recent report came out by as one focusing on the green houses by Shakespeare, and they were as big as 7%. The National Audit Office was a very significant. James, I know you've done the work through NatWest. Of course, there's a shocking gap really between actually that operation and then the ability of delivery on the ground. The cost of living crisis, which, you know, if I look at my post bag on a daily basis, whether that's the emails, comments on social media, and the old-fashioned way, the analog way, in terms of people getting such private phone and letter, that's their focus at the moment. It's tantamount for this eating or eating our never think we get into this position. So it becomes more challenging than ever to actually pursue that dream, that necessary dream, to ensure that we march quite rapidly to net zero, which obviously will be good for people's pockets, but very importantly good for the environment. I mean, looking at the average costs, the upgrading, retrofitting a home, it's anything from between 17,000 to 26,000 on average. And of course, you know, if I look at my own constituency, there are homes that are planned to be built and being built as we speak that actually fall outside the, no, you're not keen, Polly, on the EPC rating, but at the moment, what we've got, they fall outside that, the D rating. I'm pleased to hear from James actually that NatWest have made that active decision in the marketplace to look in the right direction. You've certainly wanted to finance the developers that choose that option. But of course, standards were ditched actually by this government some time ago and should have come into play in 2015. We've literally seen millions of homes actually being built, elite homes, adding to the 19 million mix that people have referred to. Just think that genuinely is a disgrace, actually. You know, not the situation with cheese, which has been referred to by the current Prime Minister. We still have that major supply issues, which a number of people have spoke about on the panel as well. So there's one of finance. There's one of, if you do have the finance, and you know, conversation earlier with NatWest, where I know you've got this pilot which is fantastic at the moment, using the green mortgages, the finance there, ensuring these energy efficient homes. So actually do that pragmatically is somewhat difficult in terms of the skill set that's out there. And in terms of the cost of supply chain and raw materials, it's more than time. So some of the things we need to look at is certainly a market response, which is considerable. You know, I know using NatWest as an example, I think it was 100 billion aspirational real target. 50% of your profits being green profits going forward. I think that's certainly fantastic. But what also the government should look at, and the future Labour government, hopefully in the not too distant future, in a year or two, ensure that we do something around VAT, and again in terms of retrofit to bring that cost considerably down. Grant funded, certainly the current government, as we have variations of that, haven't we, really, which have failed massively, very centralised. In fact, some were contracted out with significant sums of money in terms of the mix. It fell flat on the face, and I suggest it fell flat on the face. We picked up on Polly and Dan's point, but the only way you're going to do this, it's got to be place-based. It's got to be localised with our combined authorities our local authorities and councils working in partnership, actually the private and the third sector, to ensure we drive that with a national missionary zeal. So we set up a national task force to, I think the New Economics Foundation have referred to this in the report, but it's delivered locally and we upskill people. That's how we're going to do things at Pence. The Labour Party have spoke about the number of announcements, obviously at the conference, but that dash for green power by 2030. And this must be coupled. I think Ed Miliband has certainly been pressing the case along with Rachel. We've got national drive around the retrofit programme, which create those real jobs and bring down the cost for people that are so hard pressed in our communities at the moment of all tenures. Because I think Dan's right. If I look at the tenures in my own constituency, whether that's social housing, private housing, new housing being built, some considerably old, because those not on the grid, it's going to require different solutions and localised place-based approaches. In terms of public money, well, actually, the announcement from Rachel last year reaffirmed this year as well of that £28 billion per year over a 10-year period is significant in terms of our march to net zero. But that's got to be part of that funding mix with the private sector is anchoring that finance there. Actually working in partnership with combined authorities and policy referred to local bonds and those opportunities there where someone's talking about education in terms of the civil servant, some politicians, the private sector and the third sector. But look, that's how we're going to do that net zero. This is how we're going to ensure that we have green homes, regardless of tenure, whether it's market homes, the social homes, and so on. And it's got to be delivered locally.
Thank you very much. I've added more questions, but the thing I want to ask you about, but I'm not going to ask any of my questions because we've already got about different areas, but you're committed enough to come here this morning and walking out. I'm very keen to actually open up to questions and observations from the hands going here. Tell us who he is and give us a question, and I'll go to the green.
My name's Stuart Kearney. I'm Halifax human and our sort of our award level for members is I was excited to tell us about the exact same thing like you just mentioned about we're currently building homes that are owned and all the rest of it. So they convinced like a few councillors to start talking to the councils what can we do about changing that. The advice that we got from the officers was that the UK's minimum minimum standard, we're not allowed to say anywhere but if you want to build a house, it has to meet this higher standard than the national minimum. I mean, I was a bit sceptical of that, but I couldn't find anyone that would be able to say, yes, that's right.
Right, we did a report called PowerShift, which is all the powers that local authorities have got to act on net zero. We did it last year, and now we're going to update it again this year. And that includes, well, the thing is, you often tell you the easiest path, right? And you need to ask for forgiveness, not permission, right? You need to be really, really strong. And if you want to, we're running a climate leadership academy specifically for political leaders to be able to get up. There is a ceiling, not a floor, on housing standards. This is appalling. This is something that Mike can do something about if they get because the only reason that places like London and others, particularly Cambridgeshire, can afford to impose higher standards is because of land values. The National Planning Inspector will come along and tell your authority to rip out those higher standards because they will say it is a drag on the market. Not that it shapes the market, not that it improves quality, not that it drives new innovation, but that it's a drag on the market. So the National Planning Inspectorate needs to be told what to do by a Labour government, or any government at all, frankly, because we haven't got any time. And you, as a councillor, need to make sure that you give sufficient challenge to your officers to make sure you find ways to be more ambitious and hang tough when people tell you that you can't do things.
Local authority angle, whether the gentleman who agreed with that.
Hi, my name's Councillor John Savage. I'm from Southampton City Council. I speak to Ollie here as Chris Hammond, our former leader.
Yeah,
And
now
now
work for
Westminster.
us, yeah.
Mike, so I was going to ask slightly different questions to start off with, but one of the things that sort of plagues the whole energy efficiency area really is the way that it's sold to us. So what you do, you get cold calling saying, you know, I'm from Energy UK and we've got a special deal, we've got engineers in your area, and you get a salesman through your door who basically tries to scare you, offers you very high prices. And if you like, it's also an open opportunity, but cowboy traders who will jump on this as a real opportunity. But I think that as local authorities, we need to be the people who are holding the badges, say, look, you know, we are going to make sure that this is the right thing for your property and suits you. And I don't know how we go about that.
I'm going to go to James Close from the commercial perspective, talk about the customer journey, rather than bring people together on that. And maybe, you know, Dan, is that, you know, what's going on?
Yes, agreed. We tried to do the Green New Deal before 2010 and also themselves put their rules down for the new rules in the news.
Yeah. But how do you meet Nick from Chandler's Cross, who is one of our customers, and I met him as an accelerator, and he had the vision to turn that sort of sales and marketing lead generation business into an integrated, what was originally the eco, which is the utility business proposition, and turn it into an able to pay proposition. And he wants to scale up his business. He's made it paperless. He's investing in training with people. So the supply chain is there, and there are people with integrity trying to sell a sensible product that they can deliver. And I think I really like Polly's idea of the company homes guarantee, which is, you know, if we can bring, you know, either some regulation or some common standards that enable that company home guarantee to be supported by the delivery. And then, you know, we will provide facilities alongside mortgages, or, you know, it's best obviously if it's secured because it's lower cost. You know, you feel as though that's not a great leap to make from where we are to where we need to be with it.
Thank you. Look, what's happening? I'm going to kind of quickly. The gentleman on the end of this, then I'm going to go to the gentleman, thank you, and then live in rest. And what's hitting me?
All right, carry on.
Not coming back.
David Darkin, I'm Leaders National Council of Architect. One thing I would say is that planning policy is not the way to deal with this, because it always lots of very sound plan consultants like the weasel way of the secondable party connection. What we've done, what Welsh Government's done is introduce changes to the building regulations.
Yeah.
In terms of the leaky homes, the new part that we're introducing includes a requirement for somebody on site to take photographs of various building elements and submit those to the building control, which means that you can start to close the performance gap.
Thank you for this agreement. Yeah. On that building control, that obviously in response to Grenfell and other tragedies before that, and I was certainly responding from our side of the front venture at the time. We tried to put on the face of the bill, and again that was conditions around green homes, actually using some of the principles of healthy homes.
Definitely.
And it's refused outright. Look at the current direction of travel in terms of Liz Truss, new team, it's further liberalisation. So it is important, anyway, further liberalisation of planning. We fix it on your point.
Definitely, I think building regs is the way forward, but what was people to kind of do it themselves, rather than worry about whether people are bad salespeople or whatever. And I had something interesting at a meeting this morning about whether we could allow stamp duty to be used, if we pay stamp duties, but you use, spend money on retrofits, subsequently, you get that back off the stamp duties. Because we're going to incentivize people to do it themselves. We need mass partition with these very ambitious targets that we set.
Thank you. The gentleman in the blue shirt, and then I have the lady in red. No, we haven't the microphone, just please speak up.
Oh, yeah, I'm David Ward from Rockpool Insulation Manufacturers. I'm just interested in the point that a few people were talking about earlier about local authorities obviously done really well with especially social housing areas. But quite often the debate around the householders, around them and the lender. But actually, when you think about these places, people live in maybe a terraced house or converted flat or semi-detached, and actually there's an impact on the person they live next door to. I think very people think that there might be a role for local authorities in kind of solving some of this stuff at a neighbourhood scale.
Yeah, I mean, I'm staggered by the fact, I'm staggered by the fact that people like the National Infrastructure Commission seem to think it's like able to pay people all in detached houses and there's no kind of connection to other people. They've clearly never walked down the street, let alone anywhere else. So I think your point is completely correct, which is one of the reasons why we like to focus on place-based and understanding how different tenures actually need to interact with each other when you're going to do something at that scale. So the trouble is, Dan's right, West of England is very special. That is happening in West of England, that's happening elsewhere. Bath isn't the only heritage site in the country. We've got the same kind of challenges in Edinburgh, Oxford, Cambridge, or you name it. There's a whole load of those places we need to deal with those. Converted flats, so terrace homes and so on. And we have found that local authorities do have a way of being able to connect and communicate with their communities in order to be able to do that stuff. Now, some people you'll see a whole row and there'll be one that hasn't been done, right? Because somebody doesn't know that. That has to have, you have to have some kind of flexibility because otherwise you sort of get into kind of these German kind of tactics on which the opposite is really popular with anybody. But I think Dan's point about developing incentives for people who do want to do it is important. But you do also need to have a kind of collective approach, and particularly when you're combining this with new heat technologies, the idea that somebody just go, oh yeah, I'm going to look for hydrogen here and upstairs I'm going to have a heat pump, is craziness. And yet sometimes that is actually the kind of conversation that you feel you're having, not only with ministers, with people who should know better.
Thank you. And that's a real important point. I'm tiny short. I'm going to get to the living recommendation waiting.
I'm very work in just to do work I will look my renters are part of the a massive issue. The main issue is that it's the landlords who are paying for the big changes that has our experience and the improvements that they're going to disconnect to paying for this.
Very important job. I can just say that we did an event yesterday morning. Alan Whitehead, I think certainly floated the idea, didn't check off make an official statement from our budget, but floated the idea that Labour government might consider prohibiting property on road from being unfriendly areas. Quite strong residential. But I was just starting to thought about it. Is that sort of level of ambition necessary to
I genuinely
encourage landlords in that direction?
Yeah, I think we do have to do things like that as long as we give sufficient notice. As long as we say it's going to happen in so many years' time, people can prepare because what we don't want to see is but I think if you believe there's a climate emergency, I think more and more people are when you recognise that quite significant actions are going to have to take place. It's going to include things like that because we can't allow any sector to get away with not making part of the climate emergency. And so we're just going to be very honest about that. And I think, my region in some ways can believe the rest of the country and the environment is way ahead, and I think the rest of the country will follow. I don't think it's been that long, and that's why it's very important where we're getting the power. I think all when it power. What I just guard against is the lovely to see the excitement of the party, being understood about the real possibility of the government, but can I just guard against it? because events are helping us, but it's more than events. We require incredible voices, and we must focus entirely on that and never be complacent. Nothing else.
I'm not a specific comment about, but a general comment about two things really. One is there are lots of different types of properties that need to be dealt with differently, and UPC is a potential measure, not an outcome measure. I know that technology is involved in play here. I mean, we do have thermal imaging that can tell you the heating farm and how you can address it most cost effectively as well. So, and again, that seems to be how do you take, an industry from one level to the next level, highly skilled and technically able as well as committed and delivering to the customer.
But sorry, what was your name? Tilly, on your point, there are already technically powers that local authorities have got, minimum energy efficiency standards, but put on the statute, but by the government 420%. We've got feedback from our members, they describe not being worth the paper it's written on. Why? Because they don't have the capacity to. You have also got the power to regulate your local, your private landlord. You could actually introduce a kind of measure that Aaron's floated locally and see how you get on. Your organisation, and you need to go, yeah, I'm going to go anyway, see how we go. Because otherwise, we will wait for there to be law when actually there is all the competency on the statute book, and local authorities in particular have a duty not to wait national government to do things.
Thank you. We've got about 2 seconds. Any last questions or observations before we wrap up, or shall I go for closing summation thoughts from I'll give from right to left, I think. Short closing thoughts from you, Dan, Ollie, Mike, James.
Well, I just feel along with the other measure makers, the Labour measure makers, we have a responsibility to show what Labour can do in power. So I ask you to support us as much as you can. Understand that sometimes delivering things takes time because the projects we deal with are big things that don't just happen overnight. And help us to get across the message that when Labour's in power, it makes a difference. And contrast that with what the Tory government is doing.
I would say I have been banging on about energy efficiency for so long. I am now so-called off. I am having these conversations, but I'm delighted that everybody else is caught up. I think one of the reasons why the rooms are so full and why it's become empty is because we have a huge geopolitical threat, which is driven this, right? When we went into the Department of Energy and Climate Change in 2008, and they showed us where the gas pipelines were coming from, I went, oh, it's scary, isn't it, relying on them? And the rest of it, perpetual dictatorships in the Middle East. I'm sure we want to win ourselves off Saudi Arabia, because I'd quite like to be able to stand up about human rights. Is that all right? And that didn't seem like the kind of conversation we're supposed to have in the Department of Energy and Climate Change, because we're simply talking about security and carbon emissions, energy security and carbon emissions. Now we have a geopolitical crisis, which has driven people to think, bloody hell, I can't afford my bills. Actually, a lot of people couldn't afford their bills before, but frankly, there were people who filled these rooms or were in the corridors of power to really make a difference. And for people who could just about manage, their energy was not something exciting or interesting enough, energy efficiency in particular, to drive things. I know people will still spend more money on the new kitchen than they will on energy efficiency. Let's be honest about it and give them a reason to do something which they can actually do. Like I say, Alan Whitehead and I are the only ones who are going to show off our heat pumps to other people. Everybody else is going to have to new kitchen and make sure this stuff stays boring, because it's being exciting is a really bad thing for everyone.
We keep up on YouTube, so we're going to do it on we're in the climate emergency, and it requires that urgent response. But the ultimate of that is real national drive, and from a responsible that's passionate about delivery. And the only way you do that as well is actually it's got to be in partnership with the private and voluntary sector. Real excitement, as I said before, about retrofitting, about energy efficient, and it's essential now for people's pockets as well as the environment.
Yeah, and so the rule of three, you've got the energy trilemma, security, cost, urgency, the geopolitical threat, the cost of living crisis. You know, we can commit nationally and we can deliver locally, and we can help people do what's good for their pocket and what's good for the planet. And you know, let's kind of build the movement and make energy efficiency boring again.
Well, never. Well, with that, thank you everyone. So thank all of you for coming, your abiding passion for lagging past. If you're unaware, please take the food, right? You would expensive catering goes away. But moving before we go, you join me in thanking the panel and thanking the